All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You know why you're here, right? You're just like us, fascinated by the world and how things work, and you love understanding stuff that most people just kind of gloss over.
It's the best way to learn, for sure.
What? I mean, who wants to stay on the surface when you can dive deep? So today, we're going deep on something that's, well, it's both intriguing and kind of personal. It's all about this idea of genialidad, developing your potential for, well, genius, basically.
A fascinating topic, for sure. And maybe a little intimidating for
Oh,
some.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you hear genius, you might think Einstein, Mozart, these larger-than-life figures, right? But what's interesting about the texts we've been looking at, these excerpts from Desarrollo de Potencia Genial, which, by the way, pulls from El Arte de la Genialidad,
Hmm.
is that they present this whole idea not as some kind of exclusive club, but as a set of skills, principles, practices, things you can actually learn and use to unlock more of your own potential.
And that's what's so exciting about this deep dive. It's not just about admiring brilliant minds from afar. It's about understanding how we can cultivate those qualities within ourselves.
Exactly. And to be clear, we're not saying everyone's going to become the next Da Vinci, but who wouldn't want to tap into a little more of that creative and intellectual power?
It's about reaching your full potential, whatever that may look like for you.
Absolutely. So to kick things off, let's talk about this foundational concept, mentalidad de crecimiento, which translates to growth mindset. You've probably heard of it, but our sources really dive deep into it.
And connect it directly to this idea of genialidad.
Right. So the basic premise is that intelligence and skills, they're not fixed. They can actually grow and expand through effort and practice. In fact, the text says, and I'm going to quote this directly because it's so powerful, La inteligencia y las habilidades no son fijas, sino que pueden expandirse con esfuerzo y práctica. Creer en la propia capacidad de aprendizaje es fundamental para alcanzar la genialidad. And just let that sink in for a second. Your ability to learn is fundamental to reaching your full potential.
It's about recognizing that you're not limited by some predetermined set of abilities. You can always grow and develop.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, it's about recognizing that your brain is actually wired for growth.
Exactly. And the research backs this up. When you believe in your ability to learn and improve, you're more likely to embrace challenges, persevere through setbacks, and ultimately achieve more. Think about someone with a fixed mindset. When they hit a roadblock, they might just give up. They think, oh, I'm just not good at this. But with a growth mindset, that obstacle becomes a learning opportunity.
It's like instead of saying, I can't do this, you say, I can't do this yet.
Precisely. And that yet makes all the difference.
Now, speaking of learning and exploring, let's move on to what I think is one of the most fascinating aspects of this whole genialidad thing, cultivo de la curiosidad, which is all about cultivating curiosity. Think about those people who are just constantly asking questions, always digging deeper, wanting to know more about everything. Well, according to our sources, this isn't just a personality quirk. It's actually a defining characteristic of brilliant minds.
They have this insatiable thirst for knowledge. It drives them to explore new ideas, to challenge assumptions, to constantly push the boundaries of what they know.
And the text makes this really clear, saying, Los genios tienen una curiosidad insaciable. Hacen preguntas, investigan, exploran diversas disciplinas y nunca dejan de aprender. They're not just learning, they're actively seeking out new knowledge, new experiences. But here's what I'm wondering. Is it enough to just be curious? Are there specific techniques we can use to actually cultivate that curiosity, especially in areas that maybe don't immediately grab our attention?
That's a great question. And yes, the sources do offer some practical suggestions. One thing they emphasize is the importance of actively seeking out diverse perspectives, even in areas you might not be naturally drawn to. Reading books or articles that challenge your assumptions, engaging in debates with people who hold different viewpoints, these are all ways to stimulate your curiosity and expand your understanding.
So it's not just about learning more about the things you already like, it's about branching out and exploring new territories, kind of like intellectual cross-training.
Exactly. It helps to create these new connections in your brain to see things from different angles, to foster a more creative and flexible way of thinking.
And that brings us to the next piece of the puzzle, práctica del pensamiento crítico, or practicing critical thinking. Because it's not enough to just absorb information, right? You have to be able to analyze it, to question it, to really dig deep and see if it holds up.
It's about developing that discerning mind, being able to sift through information, identify biases, and evaluate evidence.
Our sources put it beautifully, they say, cuestionar la información recibida. analizar argumentos y buscar evidencia sólida fomenta una mente aguda y analítica. Esto es crucial para resolver problemas complejos de manera efectiva. So basically, critical thinking is like a mental workout. It helps you sharpen your analytical skills and become a more effective problem solver.
And in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides, that ability to think critically is more important than ever. It's about being able to discern what's credible, what's relevant, what's actually worth paying attention to.
It's like having a BS detector, right? But a really sophisticated one.
Exactly. And that's a skill that takes practice and effort to develop. It's about being willing to ask tough questions, to challenge assumptions, to not just accept things at face value.
Now, all this learning and thinking and questioning, it takes a lot of, well, it takes a lot of work, right? And that brings us to another crucial element highlighted in our sources. Disciplina y perseverancia, which is all about discipline and perseverance.
Because talent alone isn't enough. You have to be willing to put in the time, the effort, the consistent work to really develop your abilities.
Our sources make this very clear. They say, el talento sin esfuerzo no es suficiente. Los grandes genios han dedicado miles de horas a perfeccionar sus habilidades. La disciplina y la perseverancia permiten convertir el conocimiento en maestría. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it, because those are the days that really count.
It's like building a muscle. You have to train it consistently to see results.
So think about those Olympic athletes, the ones who are at the top of their game. They didn't get there by accident, right? They put in countless hours of training, pushing themselves to their limits, even when it was grueling. And that's what separates the good from the great.
It's about having that commitment, that drive to keep going, even when it's tough.
Now, we've talked about cultivating curiosity, thinking critically, being disciplined, but there's another piece to this genialidad puzzle that we can't ignore. Desarrollo de la creatividad, or developing creativity. Because genius isn't just about being smart, it's about being innovative, original, thinking outside the box.
It's about that spark, that ability to see things in new ways, to make connections that others miss, to come up with fresh and innovative ideas.
Our sources put it this way. La genialidad también implica innovación y creatividad. Explorar distintas formas de expresión como el arte, la música o la escritura y buscar conexiones inusuales entre ideas fomenta una mentalidad flexible y original. So they're saying that creativity isn't just something you're born with, it's something you can actively cultivate.
Exactly. And one way to do that is by engaging with different forms of expression, exploring different fields, getting out of your comfort zone.
So like if you're a scientist, maybe take a painting class. Or if you're a writer, maybe learn to code.
The idea is to challenge your brain to think in new ways, to make connections between seemingly disparate ideas.
Now, this might seem like a bit of a tangent, but our sources actually spend some time talking about the importance of estilo de vida saludable, or a healthy lifestyle, because it turns out your physical well-being has a huge impact on your cognitive function.
Absolutely. A healthy body supports a healthy mind.
The text says it very directly. El cerebro necesita un buen estado físico para funcionar de manera óptima. Dormir bien, alimentarse de manera equilibrada y hacer ejercicio con regularidad mejora la memoria, la concentración y el rendimiento cognitivo. So it's not just about feeling good, it's about optimizing your brain power.
Think of it like this. You wouldn't expect a car to run well on low-quality fuel, right? Your brain is the same way. It needs the right nutrients, enough rest, and regular exercise to function at its best.
So don't skimp on the sleep, folks, and eat your veggies.
Absolutely. It makes a bigger difference than you might think.
All right, one more key element we have to touch on, and this is something that really resonated with me. Interacción con personas inteligentes, or interaction with intelligent people. Because let's be real, the people you surround yourself with have a huge impact on your thinking, your growth, your overall development.
It's about creating that stimulating environment where you're constantly challenged, exposed to new ideas, and encouraged to think critically.
The text puts it this way. El entorno influye significativamente en el desarrollo intelectual. Relacionarse con personas que desafían el pensamiento propio, que ofrecen perspectivas diferentes y que fomentan el debate ayuda a expandir el conocimiento. But what if you're not surrounded by, like, a bunch of geniuses?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. While direct interaction with brilliant minds is great, it's not the only way to cultivate that kind of intellectual stimulation.
So, like, what are some practical things people can do?
Well, you can actively seek out communities, whether online or in person, that focus on topics you're passionate about. Engage in thoughtful discussions. Read books by thought leaders in your field. Listen to podcasts like this one even.
So it's about being proactive, seeking out those opportunities for intellectual engagement.
Exactly. It's about creating your own think tank, even if it's virtual.
Okay, so we've talked about gathering knowledge, honing our skills, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to what you do with that knowledge, right? And that's where aplicación del conocimiento comes in, which is all about the application of knowledge.
It's about taking what you've learned and putting it into practice, testing it out, seeing how it works in the real world.
The sources are pretty clear on this, they say. La teoría sin práctica tiene poco valor. Los genios aplican lo que aprenden, experimentan con nuevas ideas y buscan soluciones a problemas reales. It's not enough to just know stuff, you have to actually use it.
It's about bridging the gap between theory and action, taking those concepts you've learned and finding practical applications for them.
So like if you're learning a new programming language, don't just read about it, build something with it.
Exactly. Apply it to a real-world problem, experiment, see what works, what doesn't. That's how you really solidify your understanding.
And here's the thing about all of this. It's not always going to be easy, right? There are going to
Yeah.
be setbacks. There are going to be moments of frustration, maybe even failure. And that's where actitud resiliente comes in, which is all about having a resilient attitude.
Because the path to developing your potential isn't always linear. There will be bumps along the way.
Exactly. And the sources emphasize that it's not about avoiding those bumps. It's about learning how to navigate them. They say, los fracasos y errores forman parte del aprendizaje. En lugar de temer al error, hay que verlo como una oportunidad para mejorar. La resiliencia permite seguir adelante incluso ante los mayores desafíos. So it's about embracing those challenges, learning from your mistakes, and having the grit to keep going.
It's about recognizing that setbacks are an inevitable part of the process and that it's how you respond to those setbacks that ultimately determines your success.
So it's not about giving up when things get tough. It's about finding a way to learn and grow from those experiences.
And to use them as fuel to keep moving forward.
Now, this last point might seem a little counterintuitive, but our sources highlight enseñanza a otros, or teaching others, as a really powerful way to enhance your own genialidad.
Because when you teach something, you're forced to really understand it, to break it down, to make it clear for someone else.
Exactly. And the text says, transmitir conocimientos no solo ayuda a reforzar lo aprendido, sino que también obliga a estructurar las ideas de manera clara y comprensible. La enseñanza es una de las mejores formas de aprendizaje. It's like the best way to really learn something is to try to teach it to someone else.
It forces you to think about it from different angles, to anticipate questions, to really solidify your own understanding.
So find opportunities to share your knowledge, to mentor others, to explain concepts to people who might not be as familiar with them. It'll benefit them and it'll benefit you.
It's a win-win.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on some of the practical suggestions our sources provide for actually putting all of this into practice. They call them tareas para potenciar la genialidad, or tasks to enhance genialidad, and they include things like reading outside your comfort zone, regularly tackling logic puzzles, keeping an idea journal, participating in debates, experimenting with new skills, setting learning goals, and importantly, making sure you're getting enough sleep. These are all concrete actions you can take to actively cultivate your potential.
And it's about consistency. Even small, regular efforts in these areas can compound over time and lead to significant growth. It's about making these practices a part of your routine.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious effort to nurture your intellectual and creative abilities.
And to never stop learning and growing.
So, to bring it all home, the key message from these sources is that genialidad isn't some elusive quality that only a select few possess. It's something that we can all cultivate through dedication, effort, and a willingness to embrace lifelong learning. It's about fostering our curiosity, honing our critical thinking skills, being disciplined, persevering through challenges, and, importantly, never losing that thirst for knowledge and growth.
And with that in mind, here's a final thought to leave you with. What is one small, concrete step you can take today, right now, to actively nurture your own potential? What resonated with you most from this deep dive? And how can you start integrating those insights into your daily life, starting right now?
Because the journey of developing your genialidad starts with that first step.
And every step after that is a step towards realizing your full potential.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep. That's what we're all about here at The Deep Dive.
And who knows what amazing discoveries you might make along the way.